Good day, collectors and viewers. Social Distance Warrior is back, and today we're going to look at Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi as he appeared in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So, of course, Revenge of the Sith is the last of the Star Wars prequel movies. Started off with Episode 1 in 1999, which was 22 years after the very first Star Wars movie, which is Episode 4. And then, of course, followed up with Attack of the Clones, and we watched the journey between Anakin Skywalker and the relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi develop in Attack of the Clones. And then, of course, in Revenge of the Sith, we get our climatic finale, or anticlimactic, depending on whether you like the character of Anakin Skywalker. But we get to see exactly how everything unfolds, and we've always wondered how he became Darth Vader, and of course we find out in this movie. And Ewan McGregor, who took on the role of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, obviously took the mantle from Alec Guinness from back in the original Star Wars movies, and he did a amazing job up till today. It's one of the most renowned parts of that prequel trilogy is the part that Ewan McGregor played in Episode 1, 2, and 3. Now, of course, the character that we're looking at today is Jedi Master Obi-Wan, the one that's going to get into his conflict and battle with Anakin Skywalker. And before he does that battle with Anakin Skywalker, he's going to get a nice espionage spy mission to take out General Grievous, and we get to see that. So lots of action in Episode 3, and it started off with our good friend here, Obi-Wan. Our first action figure would come out the same year as the movie release, which would be 2005, on the Revenge of the Sith packaging, and that first figure would be continue the whole theme of action features that they started with the Saga Collection, Attack of the Clones wave, and that continues on over here, and that's this guy over here, Slashing Attack, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So this is the first figure that I was able to purchase on the next day from the retailer. This time, in this case, it was Walmart. Very interesting. So we got a little spoiled with Episode 1. We had midnight openings, so we were able to go to a Midnight Madness opening and get our figures. And by the time Episode 2 came along, all those figures from Episode 1 warmed the pegs. A lot of them didn't sell. They got a lot of figures that stayed on the pegs, and retailers shied away from doing a Midnight Madness. I know some places in the States did it. Here in Canada, I never found anybody that did Attack of the Clones. And by the time Revenge of the Sith came along, nobody was doing it. It was such a small release. I actually went to one of the stores. They had nothing on release day. And in a panic, I went to a different Walmart, and thankfully they had some. They had one of those little bins up in the aisleway, and it was like hidden away from everything. I'm pretty sure it wasn't even completely in the toy aisle. But I did manage to pick up some figures, and obviously to my rejoice, one of them was Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, this one with the slashing action. Now, at first look at this character, you're like, well, that's a pretty good sculpt, and it is. The sculpt is amazing on these guys. The technology that they used and advanced with the action figures are far, far from where they started with the Power of the Force 2 collection in 1995. At this point, 10 years later, we're sculpting-wise a lot more realistic. We don't have any more muscular figures. We have our added articulation. But we have something on here that's got action features, and this one's got slashing action. So if you press his legs together here, he does the slashing action with his lightsaber. So you can reenact his battle there with General Grievous. You can reenact his battle at the beginning with Count Dooku. And of course, you can reenact his battle at the end in the Duel of the Fates with Anakin Skywalker when it's good versus evil and turning him into Darth Vader. So that's the slashing action this figure comes with. He does have lightsaber fixed in his hand here, which sucks, but I guess they designed it this way so it doesn't fall out of his hand. But you can see there is some added articulation here. He's kind of pre-posed just to do slashing action, so you can open his hand up and he can swat with one hand as well. He can kill bugs, he can kill Jedis, he can kill Sith, he can kill robots, anything you want, battle droids, whatever you want, maybe even a few clone troopers after they go bad. But that's Jedi Master Obi-Wan. We'll take a nice close-up look at his head sculpt there so you can see how far we've come with this figure. He's got a beard now. His hair is shorter. He's a little bit wiser. He's getting to become the Obi-Wan that we know and love. That's what he looks like Head sculpt wise, it's painted nicely, it's sculpted nicely. There you can see him from the side. Doesn't look entirely like Ewan McGregor, but nonetheless, you know, for the technology at the time, it was more than sufficient, especially if you were a Star Wars fan. As far as articulation on this guy, you can turn his head side to side, so he doesn't have his head on a ball joint. It's fixed on there, just side to side. His arm here at the shoulder, it is at a swivel, so you can pre-pose this guy. You can turn his arm up, you can turn his arm down, you can have him holding his lightsaber in both hands, which is a neat way to pose your guy there. But obviously, it being sculpted in his hand, you can't really do much with this figure. You can see the articulation there at the elbow, the swivel there, the bend. It's very loose because it's designed for that action pose. And of course, over here at the wrist as well, you can take his hand out. So you can see the lightsaber is mounted to his hand there, and it just plugs right in. It's not a spoiler. He doesn't get his hand chopped off, in case you're wondering. He does come with an additional hand where you can just plug that hand in. And we're going to put that one in so we can do the rest of the review. Otherwise, that lightsaber is going to keep getting in the way. And that's his swatting hand. So Obi-Wan can do, you know, swats and give other characters fresh ones, just like the Anakin figure did. Maybe they can give each other a Jedi fresh one across the head. So that's action feature there. At least you can change that hand up if you so please. It kind of looks weird when you don't have the lightsaber in there. I don't really know what he's doing with that arm. It doesn't really position well. If you put it to the side, he's kind of arched. But again, it's got some play features there, action features to entice it with kids. And he has the same kind of articulation here on the other hand. This one's not as loose, but when you straighten it out, it definitely looks deformed. You don't have a nice sculpt on the arm there. It looks better if you have it bent up. As far as waist articulation, because he goes side to side, that movement is mainly when you're pressing the legs together. So if you were to move this over, you're going to get a click, and then you can have him swatting sideways as opposed to, or slashing sideways as opposed to standing straight. So that's what feature you have there. They did have an added part there for the lightsaber hilt to clip onto the belt, which is a nice one. So that mounts right there. We'll just take that off momentarily to see what the articulation is down here. As far as the legs, you do have articulation there at the legs, somewhat. But because he's got his Jedi robes down here, there's no slit in there. He's not sitting. This guy's going to be standing or laying down after he gets defeated by your Anakin Skywalker figure. So no articulation down at the knees here or at the feet. He's got a fixed pose. It's a nice pose because he's standing straight. And then underneath here, you can see the pegs there on his feet. And if we look closely, we can see it says 2000. In this case, it says 2004 Lucasfilm Limited. And on the other foot, it says Hasbro China. And that's because they were obviously prepping these guys for release in 2005 at the time. So that's slashing action Jedi Master Obi-Wan from the front. That's what he looks like from the side. And then we turn around to the back, and that's what he looks like from the back. So a nice action figure, nice release, but again, limited in what you could do with this guy. All right, so next up, we get another Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. Also, as part of the Revenge of the Sith line, around the same time, if not a little bit later, or sometimes even at the same time of release, this one was Jedi Kick. So this one's a slightly different sculpt here. You can see Obi-Wan Kenobi, the face sculpt, a lot more realistic. You can see mine falling back here, again, because of the action feature that he comes with. But a lot more realistic than that previous Obi-Wan, even the head sculpt there. And the paint job with a lighter hair color as well. Let's have a nice close-up look at that head sculpt just so you can see it. So a nice sculpt there of Obi-Wan Kenobi looking very serious, his eyes painted nice. One thing I liked about these Revenge of the Sith figures, quality control was very good on them. I didn't find many figures that had cross eyes, or the eyes weren't painted in well, or the paint job wasn't good on the face, because that's definitely a sticking point. It always was for me on action figures. If the eyes weren't painted properly, you might as well just throw it in the garbage, because you couldn't look at these action figures, or I couldn't. But that's what he looks like head sculpt wise all the way around. And we can see here he does have an action feature as well. You notice that leg was loose there because he's got a kicking action pose here on this figure, and you basically wind him up, and you know he can play soccer, he can do kicks, so Jedi kicks on there. You can see the way that works there. There is a turn on the one leg over here. It's got a spring where it motions that leg to kick up. This thing's actually pretty neat and intricate. I never actually knew how the feature works, because sometimes I could get him to swing his leg and sometimes I couldn't. And if you look underneath here on the boot, let me just move this guy out of the way so we're not bumping anybody. But inside this boot leg over here, where you put the figure onto the peg, there is a small button on there. That button is what activates that kick. So when it's pressed in there, it's actually a pretty neat feature. It either locks into place or it unlocks. And that's what gives you the option to do your Jedi kick swing. That's the feature on this guy over here. We're going to look at articulation wise. As far as the head, it's not on a swivel. It just turns side to side as well. But he's got a nice weathered paint job here. His clothes look very dirty, almost burnt. Possibly from that battle on Mustafar with Anakin Skywalker. And his clothes started to get crispy before Anakin started to get crispy. See how I turned that into crispy Anakin? But that's our Obi-Wan Kenobi there. As far as his Jedi robes, you can see they're painted on nicely there. They're weathered. He does have articulation here, swivels at the shoulders there, so you can move his arm all the way up. You have nice added articulation there to get Obi-Wan into battle. Had lost his lightsaber. That's fine. So that's articulation there. He does have it there at the elbow as well. He can just swivel that, turn it. You can't bend it. So that doesn't have that added option on there. And of course here at the wrist, you can turn his hands back and forth. So you do have added articulation on these guys. They've come a long way from where they were initially or originally. You can turn him side to side as well. He does have a swivel there at the waist to turn him side to side. This guy doesn't have the peg to plug that lightsaber in because he doesn't come with a hilt. But you can see he's got the belt painted nicely all the way around. He does have his robes flowing differently. I love that they never just reused the same Obi-Wan figure that they had with the slashing action. That this kicking one is actually a whole new sculpt, which is a nice feature to have as well. He doesn't have any mobility to move his legs to have him sitting. This one is fixed with that really loose knee joint there to have him kick. So it's articulated. Unfortunately, you can't sit. You can just kick. And then the other one doesn't do anything except lets you motion him to turn him. So it just kind of twists as opposed to moves back and forth. As far as the boots themselves, this one doesn't give you any motion here on the boot. But this guy over here, they have added that option to turn his boot side to side as well. So you have some added articulation there. And that's what Obi-Wan looks like from the front. You can see this hand over here has an open sculpt as well. So you can have it where he's doing, a force block or a force push, or you can have him, patting his friend down, or maybe patting his creature friend Boga, or maybe put his hand on R2-D2, whatever you want there with Obi-Wan Kenobi. But it's kind of strange. I never realized you do it like that. And he's almost got the Michael Jackson, Thriller pose where you can have him doing the little zombie dance, right? Okay, so that's our Obi-Wan Kenobi there from the front. Let's have a look at Obi-Wan underneath there to see his foot pegs again. And we'll notice on one foot it says 2000 and it still says 2004 on that one, Lucasfilm Limited. The other one says Hasbro China. So that's what it looks like from underneath. There he is one more time from the front. Let's have a look at Obi-Wan from the side. Look, he likes to fall back there. Good for doing the limbo. That's what he looks like from the side, and that's what Obi-Wan looks like from the back. So that's our Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi kick action feature version. So we get another Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Jedi Master outfit, also in 2005. This time part of the Revenge of the Sith Mustafar final duel. So I was super ecstatic to find this action figure. As I was looking for a playset, and we're dying for playsets at the time, we finally got a volcano where we could fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I found this thing at Zellers, which is like the Canadian equivalent of Target. That was the only place to find it, and I was super ecstatic. I jumped in there, found it, and it came with an exclusive Anakin Skywalker and an exclusive Obi-Wan Kenobi. So once upon a time, we used to get exclusive figures with playsets as pack-ins. They were like a bonus feature, and that's this guy over here. And again, the nice thing about him, he's a brand new sculpt as well. And you can see he's a very, very like rugged, worn down Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can see the way he's holding his lightsaber there. He's ready for battle. He can't believe he's fighting his Padawan / best friend and having to fight him to the death, in this case, in Revenge of the Sith. So we're going to take that lightsaber out of his hand. Again, he comes with our standard lightsaber that we've seen with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He comes with that packed in the playset. And we're going to take a close-up look at this guy over here that came with a Mustafar playset. So close-up look at the head, you can see it's a brand new sculpt of Obi-Wan. He's got like the wet slash, sweaty head look there. The paint job wasn't as good as on pack-in figures as they were on regular releases. That was, common stuff at the time. That's not out of the ordinary. But it was nice to get these action figures, especially when they weren't just the exact same figure that you had. It was a different version, so it gave you another reason as a collector to pick up the set, just because you love your Star Wars action figures so much. So that's what Obi-Wan Kenobi looks like head sculpt wise. The head, of course, just turns side to side slightly. The head sculpt on this one is not as good as the other guys, but you can still tell just by the outfit that he's wearing that it is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And of course, he looks pretty sad and concerned and wondering, is he going to survive this battle with his good old ex-friend, Anakin Skywalker slash Darth Vader? So as far as articulation on this guy here, because he is a pack-in figure, he doesn't have any swivels or any ball joints on him. His arms do move up and down. There is no added articulation at the wrist here, but it is painted nicely there. You can see it, it's pre-posed. Same thing with the other side. You can't really do anything. He's got a fixed pose, so you can either put his lightsaber in this hand or in this hand, have him battling Anakin Skywalker. He does have waist articulation there, which is nice that they added that feature. They didn't cheap out on that. And you can see the paint job there on the belt that runs all the way around. Not as much paint apps as the other ones were, but there is still some silver on there. As far as the legs down here, again, the bottom part of his robe doesn't have any slit in it. So although there is some articulation on the legs, you can't really do anything on this guy. I don't know, it's beside me sometimes why they didn't put a slit on these guys to give you the option to do more with them. Since they factored in the articulation, you might as well just fix the legs in straight and not have them move, right? But then he wouldn't be an action figure. So having a bit of mobility, I guess, is good, but it would have been nice to have this either with a slit there or just have it cloth altogether. On the bottom, moving our way down here, you can see there is articulation at the leg. There's no added articulation or bendable knees. That's all fixed in there. You see his wrinkly pants. You see his nicely painted boots. And then if we lift him up underneath there, you can see he does have his foot pegs there on the bottom. And I'll try to make out what it says on this guy. This one does say 2005. Lucasfilm Limited. And on the other foot there, it says Hasbro China. So that's what he looks like there. Let's have one more peek at him from the front. That's Obi-Wan from the Mustafar duel. Let's have a look at him from the side. He's kind of slouched over in battle pose, and that's what he looks like from the back as well. So nicely sculpted, and it was nice again that we had a brand new sculpt to go along with Anakin. So, price point wise, it wasn't a very expensive playset. Mustafar, they did go on clearance. You could find them a dime a dozen at some point, but it's a nice entry point, especially if you were a kid and you could talk your parents into getting that playset. You'd have the two main characters in a place where they can fight, which is awesome. So I'd imagine that was a nice entry level or entry point for some collectors. So also in 2005, we got a Revenge of the Sith packaging duel at Mustafar, Target exclusive Obi-Wan. So there was an Obi-Wan and an Anakin Skywalker. I don't have the figure. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. This is basically the slashing attack Obi-Wan Kenobi figure. And he's just got a tint on him to make it look fiery, to pay homage to the lava planet that these guys are fighting on in Revenge of the Sith. And that was a Target exclusive, so it was another chase figure that you could get. Again, it wasn't available up here in Canada, so I was never able to get my hands on it. And because he was just basically a repack that was painted in a different color, I wasn't going to pay any astronomical shipping charges to have him shipped up here. So unfortunately, I don't have him, but we do have a photo there for you to look at. And we're going to stick with 2005, and we get another version of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. This one in a battle arena set. So there are these really interesting battle arena sets where they came with action figures, pre-posed and action poses, and the sculpts weren't the greatest on some of them. But they were scenes from the movies, and you could move like little pegs or slots on the bottom there where you can have these action figures battling, and they didn't sell very well. It would have been better if those figures were like super articulated. I would have bought it in a heartbeat, but they weren't. They were pre-posed, and there was one battle arena that came with General Grievous and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And again, we're going to look at the picture on the screen there. And that is just worth mentioning because it was an action figure released in that year, in 2005. So next up, also in 2005, again, we used to get a lot of different action figures on movie releases. This time, Revenge of the Sith packaging, deluxe set. This is a creature with figure. In this case, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he came with Boga. We're going to have a look at him here. Let's just move these two guys out of the way so we don't knock them over. And that's this guy over here. Let's see if I can get him out without damaging anything. So this is an awesome one here. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi when he's doing his chase to try and track down General Grievous as Grievous takes off, like the coward that he is. We got a release of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Boga, and I love this figure. I love the character, and I love the creature. It'd be nice to see a re-release of this character in the vintage collection. You know, maybe with some feathers or some real articulation on it. But you can see Boga itself, a very long tail, and it's very rubbery. It stood the test of time really well. It does have some action features, but you can see his legs there, his feet. He's got like chicken feet. It's like a chicken lizard. And he's got Obi-Wan sitting on his back there. He's got a really neat head sculpt there. You can see there's articulation. You can even open his mouth. Now there's an action figure feature that opens that up. But it's a very neat figure. You can see neatly painted considering this is 2005. He does have, you know, his straps and stuff over here where Obi-Wan can hold on to direct Boga and get him to chase Grievous. But definitely an awesome figure. And if we turn that upside down here, you can see that underneath his stomach is painted. He looks like a lizard, almost like a salamander there from underneath. And you can see the lizard skin and how it's a different color. You can also see that it says 2005 Lucasfilm Limited there on his underbelly. But sculpted and painted really well for a figure from that time. And that's what he looks like from above. Just to show you, we're going to take a look at Obi-Wan in a second. But that's this guy here. And he does, of course, have an action feature where if you pull his tail, you can turn him. One sec, let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah, you can get his legs to spring up and his mouth to open and do that chirp that he does, that big loud chirp sound that he makes in the movie. And you can turn him side to side so his mouth can turn. So a pretty neat feature, and it doesn't get in the way. You can have him just sitting on your shelf and he's not deterred by that action feature. He sits there nicely. Okay, now I wanted to show you the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure that it comes with. Again, he comes in packaging like this way. He's pre-posed, no articulation at the knees. So if you pick up the set, you are only using this action figure on the back of your, riding your mount, your Boga, or you're going to have him squatting because he's got to go to the washroom. That's all you're going to do with this Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he is fixed on there. The nice thing about it is when you have him sitting on Boga, he looks like he's seated on there, like he's driving him. And it turns out well, especially if you have more than one Obi-Wan action figure. So you can just have him in this role only. And that's where you want to have him anyway. You're not going to have him not sitting on the back of Boga. You're going to have him Boga. You're going to have him riding him. And as far as articulation on this guy over here, let's have a look at his head sculpt. Pretty close there. Again, you can see they don't put as much detail into the pack-in figures. It's a pretty standard head sculpt. His hair is dirty blonde. It's very, very light colored. Doesn't have any weathering on it or any shades of gray, nothing like that. He does have articulation here at the head. You can still turn it side to side, so they've given us that. And strangely enough, they've given us swivel elbows on this guy over here, so you can turn him side to side, and I guess maybe they put that on there so you can grab the straps lasso that's holding Boga there. You can hold on to it nice and firmly. That's probably why it's like that. And you can see there's some discoloration on mine here on the paint job. That was just spatter that was originally on there. As far as articulation, nothing at the elbow. His arms kind of curled. And then, of course, over here at the hand, you do have a swivel. You can turn that hand all the way around to have him holding either a lightsaber or holding the strap there on Boga. Same thing with the other side. Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same feature. There he is. He's a kind of crouched down in a wrestling pose like he's flexing. As far as waist articulation, you can turn him side to side. So they have added that feature there. Again, just gives you a few more options when you have him on Boga's back. Nothing on the belt. The belt's not painted. You can see it's just a straight brown. There's no silver coloring on there. There's nowhere to put the lightsaber hilt because there's no need when he's riding him. And then, of course, from the waist down here, he's fixed. He can't do anything with his legs. He is fixed in that pose, and you can just see what he looks like there underneath. It's kind of like a flat sculpt to sit in that saddle on the back of Boga. As far as his legs, fixed pose this way. And if we look underneath, no foot pegs because we don't need any on this guy. And there's no date there on the bottom. It's probably in another spot on Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he doesn't have any dates on him there. That's what he looks like from the back. Let's just take one more look at him there from the side, and then one more look at him from the front. Let's put his arms down to get a nice look at what our pack-in Obi-Wan Kenobi figure is with Boga. That's that. All right, so we're still in 2005, and we're going to get another Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi from Revenge of the Sith. Also on the Revenge of the Sith card, this one is Obi-Wan Kenobi with pilot gear. So the sculpt starts to get really good here as we go. So that's the Obi-Wan Kenobi that we have there. And you can see he's got his Jedi robe on. Again, pre-sculpted sitting over him here, but it sits and flows really nicely. Actually, I'm really fond of this figure. I love the sculpt. I love the many different stances and uses you can have him in here. You can either have him standing, alert, on your shelf this way. You can have him sitting in your Jedi Starfighter with the pilot gear on, or of course you can have him in battle. We're going to look at all those features now. So you can see this cape flows nicely all the way around on Obi-Wan here. And you can see the hood is nicely sculpted laying back there. And I love the way the folds are going in this in the Jedi robe there. And it's a nice soft plastic, so it sits on there nicely, and it sits really well over the figure. It's definitely sitting like it's designed, and they've sculpted it where it looks like his arms are over here sitting in the figure, and that's awesome. I love that. As we bring it up closer, you can see that he does have his pilot gear on. So he's got that headgear on that he had at the beginning of the movie, especially when Anakin was with him and they were communicating back and forth. So you can see that sits nicely on his head. There's no paint on that, no paint applications, which, you know, kind of makes it a little bit too bland. But nonetheless, it's a really nice feature that they've added on this figure. And this is a really good Obi-Wan sculpt. We're going to look at that in one sec. So let's take that headgear off. That just comes off very easily like that. You can see it's sculpted just to sit nicely on his head. Not much to it there, no paint job. Very reminiscent of the one that Jango Fett, of course, wore in Attack of the Clones. So now taking a close look at Obi-Wan Kenobi, we can see him close up here. We can see the head sculpt is a lot better than the previous ones. He's got really small eye pupils. Mine do here. They're very, very tiny, thin. But I really do like this sculpt. It's one of my favorite action figures that I have of Obi-Wan from the prequels. Taking a close look at the figure, we're going to remove his robe just to see what it looks like underneath there. And that's what the robe looks like on its own. It's almost like a ghost version action figure. You can put that on other figures as well, but they can't have their arms bent or anything. If they're sloped down, you can have it on sitting on another Jedi if you wanted to as well. That's his robe. As far as the figure itself, now we're talking when we come to Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is one of the greatest sculpts, probably one of the best sculpts. This is where it originates from. We've seen this sculpt made many times after this part, but that's the original one where it came from. You can see his unlit lightsaber sitting on his waist there, plugged into his belt. Awesome. And of course, we bring it up close here. We can see his head is on a ball joint there. So now we finally have a super articulated Obi-Wan Kenobi. We would get him in the same year the movie was released. We just have to wait for all the action ones to pass first. As far as articulation here at the shoulders, he does have a swivel joint there. So you have full movement there. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, you can do a lot with him. You can see the way his robe folds in nicely here like a V all the way down, but nice movement there at the shoulder. And of course, you have the swivel here at the elbow as well, which is awesome. So you can bend his elbow. You can turn it back and forth as well on there. Okay, but having that added motion is awesome. And of course, in his hand here as well, you do have swivel motion there on the hand inside the Jedi robes there. So an awesome figure articulation wise there. As far as the waist, you can turn him side to side, and he does have that added movement to do a crunch and back. So this is like next level stuff for us for action figures in 2005. I love that. I couldn't believe this is a regular release figure, but he is. They've given us a lot. You can see the nice paint applications here on the belt. Tongue twister for me. Nice little silver added touch there, different color pocket on the belt there. And then, of course, we work it all the way around there on the back. And as far as his legs, no swivel here at the thighs, but you can move his leg all the way up. Okay, and you can bend his knees as well. So added articulation there, and they can turn side to side. And of course, he has articulation here at the ankle as well. Slight, ever so slight, but nonetheless, you have it. You want to have him doing a kick or jumping motion or doing whatever you want him to do, he can do it. This is the ultimate version of Obi-Wan Kenobi and an awesome action figure. stands the test of time even today, considering this is 2005. So same motion on the other side there as well. If we lift him up, we can see he does have his little foot pegs there in the bottom. Mine's got a tiny bit of sticky tack over here. And it does say 2005 there on one foot. The other one says Hasbro China. So nice sculpting on this action figure. I'll take one more look at him from the front. And then we'll turn him here to the side to have a look at him there. And then we'll turn around to the back to have a look at Obi-Wan from the back as well. So that's our Obi-Wan figure from Revenge of the Sith. Obi-Wan with pilot gear. So we get one more figure in 2005, and this one will be also part of the Revenge of the Sith line. It will be a deluxe with battle droid 2-pack Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't have this figure. We're going to throw a picture up here that you can look at. Again, pre-sculpted Obi-Wan Kenobi. I still want to count him in the line because he was part of the 3.75 inch, the 3.75 inch figure releases. He was available. He had those action features, but he's very limited and very undesirable when you see what he looks like. But nonetheless, worth mentioning, and he's up there, and he came with the battle droid. And there was a few figures that had this release, but Obi-Wan came out in that form as well. So we're going to jump ahead 1 year now to 2006. And this one, now we've gone away from the Revenge of the Sith line. Now we've turned it into the Saga collection, okay? And we get a version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, this time from the Revenge of the Sith, with gray temples. So they actually gave him that weathered look the way he was in the movie as well. And that's this guy over here. Now, I love this figure, just like I love the pilot gear one release, because they've taken one extra step over here. They've given us that action figure, but they've finally given us a robe, which the other one should always have come with a cloth robe. But it's nice to see the difference on them that way. So he does have a robe. You can see the robe flows really nicely for a 3.75 inch figure all the way around. And of course, you can pull that over his hood there as well. It doesn't sit that well. But for an action figure this small, we were not complaining. I love getting soft goods with my figure. I love soft goods to this day. It definitely brings in the realism more on these characters here. So we're going to take his lightsaber out of his hand there to have a nice little closer look at him. Obi-Wan, and we can see the paint job is a lot better on his head here. It is on a swivel, so it's almost identical to that previous figure. And you can see the paint job's a lot better. The eyes are painted nicer. But you'll notice that he does have his temples here, the part of his hair. Where his temple is, it's painted gray, so he's wiser, Obi-Wan, like he was in the movie, and that's the first time we see that. You can see it's painted there on both sides, all the way around. As far as the action figure himself, if we take off the robe, which we're going to do here in 1 sec, we're going to notice that he's exactly the same action figure as the one with the pilot gear, so he has that articulation fully, but he does have a slightly wider leg stance here, so that's probably the main difference there, the temples and the leg stance, but a worthy mention because, again, they kept trying to update him slightly and re-release him in the line. And how do you get another figure released when you made one so good like this one over here? The only thing missing over here is if there's to add some added articulation so you can do a little bit more with his legs, have him sitting or whatnot or kicking, because you can't really do much other than go back and forth with them. Otherwise, a perfect action figure. So that's what we got from the Saga collection, Revenge of the Sith. So next up, also in 2006, we'd get another Obi-Wan Kenobi. Again, worth mentioning just because he's a similar release. Hasbro was making holographic versions of figures, and this is an Obi-Wan Kenobi holographic version from the Saga collection in 06. Again, we're going to look at the picture that's up on screen here. Worthy mention, they did make other figures as well. There was a Darth Maul. There was a number of Jedis. Coyote Mundi, I remember that one. I think there was a Plo Koon. I think there was a Commander Cody. There's a number of them that got released as holographic figures at the time as well. Now we're going to fast forward 1 year to 2007. This is part of the anniversary collection. We get an Obi-Wan Kenobi with the Rebreather. I love this guy. So let's have a look at this one. And you'll notice right off the hop that the body sculpt looks very similar, but the added features on there makes him look different. So it is a similar body sculpt to the one we've already gotten with Obi-Wan, but he comes with some extra features here. He comes with that rebreather in his mouth there. So again, this is the anniversary collection Obi-Wan, and it's a brand new head sculpt. We're going to bring it up close here. We can see he's giving us a lot more added action features here. So you remember he falls into the water when they execute Order 66 and he's swimming away. instead of drowning, he puts that breathing apparatus in his mouth. And believe it or not, that breathing apparatus actually comes out. We're going to look at that in one sec. He does come with a staff here that he fights General Grievous with, along with the blaster that he fights Grievous with there as well, the one he shoots his chest out and blows him up with. So let's take that staff out. As you can see, it's nicely sculpted. The little effects on the ends, they don't come off. They're sculpted in there, but it's a really nice looking staff. And again, stands the test of time. Some of the sculpting and paint work that they did on this stuff was awesome, and it's designed nicely. It's not exaggerated. It's to scale. It fits nicely in his hand, and you can have him battling Grievous with that. As far as the figure himself here, we're going to bring him nice and close to look at what he looks like with that breather in his mouth. You can see there. You see his head is sculpted differently, so it's a brand new head sculpt with the head, with the hair slicked back because he was in the water. I love these different Obi-Wan figures. They're awesome when they make these things. In that rebreather, how small it is, very easy to lose. Believe it or not, it actually comes out. We're going to pull that out, just have a look at it. There's a little spot there that pegs into his mouth. It looks like it's flesh color, but that slots right into his mouth. I almost lost it. Never to find again. I just wanted to show you kind of what it looks like from the front there so you can have an idea. So that's the rebreather, sculpted, painted nicely. Now, if we look at his face without that rebreather in there, he looks very strange. So if you had this action figure and you lost that rebreather, it almost looks like someone knocked his teeth out and Obi-Wan, is toothless, but that's what he looks like without the rebreather in there. So there's a spot to plug it in, and my only worry is losing that. It's almost like a useless action figure if you lose it, but I love the feature. As far as articulation, he's exactly the same as the other figures that we've had there. I do have that gun in his hand, so he does have a different feature. We're not used to seeing Jedis with guns, so I love how it's sculpted in there. It's sculpted nicely. He's got the trigger finger, see that, on the gun? So it's sculpted very well, and the gun is awesome. Like the gun sculpt on there, bring it up closer for you to see. It's sculpted really nicely. Looks awesome in his hand there, and it definitely is scene specific for Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can have him sitting in that scene for you, fighting Grievous, but definitely not fighting Grievous without that mouthpiece in. Either you change that head sculpt, or you put that rebreather in there just so he stays attentive. That's Obi-Wan Kenobi with the rebreather from the Anniversary Collection. All right, so next up is 2008, also the Anniversary Collection. So that continued for a couple years. It was the 30th anniversary of Star Wars in 2007. And of course, that continued on with the releases in 2008. They stuck with that same theme and scale, except they didn't have them coming with coins anymore. Now they switched over to stands. And we got another version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's this guy over here, the Revenge of the Sith one. So I have this one on packaging, and you guys are going to get exclusive unboxing for this guy over here. I've kept him in packaging since he came out, so this figure here is very old now. He is now 16 years old, I believe it is, and we're going to unbox him here just because he is the ultimate version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm going to show you why. So look how awesome he looks on his card there. You can see that he's kind of posed like he's fighting Anakin. You're in the perspective of Anakin Skywalker, and that lightsaber is about to chop your limbs off. Okay, so nice depiction of Ewan McGregor there, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you can see our Obi-Wan in packaging there in his Revenge of the Sith Jedi robes, and you can see behind him there, he comes with a nice figure stand, and on the side there it says 30th anniversary 7707. Okay, and if we turn this packaging around to the back, then we're going to notice the picture of Obi-Wan there with a nice little description. So you can read if you want to pause it there. And then, of course, a picture of him from the movie. As he's fighting Anakin, you can see he looks really distressed there. He's almost in the pose from the one that came on Boga. So if we look at that picture there and we look at that figure there, maybe we can use him for this specific scene. Just kidding. But there's this character profile, stats on him, and there's some other figures that came with him in the line there. And I love how they did this where they didn't want to unveil what characters were coming. They just wrote coming soon. That was paying homage to the original Star Wars releases back in Return of the Jedi 83 where they used to black them out. But those were some other figures that were coming out that they wanted to surprise you with. This was the first one in 2008. Number one, you can see over here. Okay, so let's unbox this guy. for the first time and take a close look at why this is the ultimate version of our Obi-Wan Kenobi. And here's the Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Anniversary Collection in 08 out of packaging for the very first time. So exclusive unboxing after 16 years. Here we go. So you can see that he does come on the stand there, Obi-Wan Kenobi with the Revenge of the Sith logo. I love these stands. They were very popular. They had one for each one of the 6 movies at the time. And you can see it says Obi-Wan there on the front, and they came exclusive with these figures. And there on the inside, you can see it says 2005 Lucasfilm Limited, Hasbro China. So let's toss that guy aside. Let's have a look at our Obi-Wan Kenobi figure here. We can see a nice new head sculpt on there. Again, a little more realistic. I wouldn't say it looks entirely like Ewan McGregor, but again, they've come a long way at the time with these action figures. And he doesn't disappoint for sure. His head is on a ball joint there. We'll look at that in a sec. You see he's got his lightsaber in hand. We're going to remove that out of his hand to take a nice close look at the action figure. Now again, we've seen most of this action figure before, but there is some newness over here. So the figure itself, head on a ball, so you can turn that all the way around. You can actually look up pretty far with this guy now compared to what you could before. And you can look down pretty well as well. So we can see he's got that nice little hair strand separated there on the front to look like he's been in battle for a while and he's been weathered a bit. That's what it looks like there from the back. He's almost like he's starting a mullet there in the back. That's our Obi-Wan Kenobi from the front there, articulation wise. Again, we've seen before here on this character with the swivel there at the shoulder. So full articulation there at the elbow as well, and of course at the hand. And you can see he's got the gripping motion there at the hand. And then if we look over here at the waist, he does still have that articulation to turn him side to side, and he does have a bit of a crunch to go forward and back. So it's the same sculpt there. Now the new part over here. We finally got an Obi-Wan Kenobi with some cloth goods here on the side of his bottom part of his Jedi robes. So you have that added spot there for articulation for this guy. And you start to wonder, why would they add that articulation if you can just move his legs forward and back? Well, we have one added feature on here. Swivel thighs. This is like a first for a Star Wars action figure. You can actually bend your Obi-Wan Kenobi all the way out there. If we lift that bottom part of his robe, you can see that there is a slit there. Mind you, mine's brand new, so he's a little bit tight. But you can see it there at the leg, so you can have that leg in a kicking motion. That's a first for a Star Wars action figure. You can do a lot with this guy here, and this is actually the best version of Obi-Wan Kenobi that we'd only ever see get released in this wave. So you can see he does have full articulation there on the legs at the thighs, and that was of course something brand new for us at the time. And believe it or not, until I did this review, I wasn't even aware that my Obi-Wan Kenobi had articulation there. And I was like, should I open this character? Should I not? And when I did my research and saw that he does have waist articulation there on his legs, I said I definitely have to open this guy up and review him so we can all look at him together. And of course, he does have articulation there at the knee, and then he does have it at the ankle as well. And nicely now they were painting the little slot there on the ankle that wasn't painted before. It's painted a nice brown, so it blends in nicely with your action figures. So again, they've come a long way with these figures. You can see how much more you can do with this character now that you can pose him and not be restricted by his plastic part of the robes here, because this part's cloth, as well as having that swivel at the thigh. You can do a lot. And he does still have that slot on his belt there to plug in his unlit Jedi lightsaber as well, which he doesn't come with. He just comes with a lightsaber and a stand. So they cheaped out a little bit on the accessories, but probably because they gave us that added articulation on our Obi-Wan Kenobi figure. So this is what he looks like there from the front. This is what Obi-Wan Kenobi looks like underneath there with his little foot pegs. And then that's what he looks like from the side. Let's just straighten him out a little bit, fix his posture. And then that's what he looks like from the back. And you can see these are all cloth goods down here on the bottom part, which is a nice added feature that differentiates the other Obi-Wan Kenobis from this guy and makes this guy our ultimate version. So that's from the 2008 Anniversary Collection. Here's a little bonus. I just wanted to show you what it looks like on this stand platform. from Mustafar to see how well he looks standing on this. There's 2 foot pegs on there he's standing on. He just looks amazing standing on there, your Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that's how he's going to sit in my display. That's for sure. All right, so we jump a couple years to 2010, and of course, Hasbro would give us the vintage collection, and we'd finally get a vintage collection version of a prequel character. In this case, it was a Revenge of the Sith version of Obi-Wan Kenobi on a Revenge of the Sith card, vintage collection style. And that figure itself is the pilot figure that you see over here. Unfortunately, it should have been the figure over here that came with the waist articulation and the cloth goods on the bottom, but they never used that. They used a more inferior version to release on this card back, but that's what we got. Maybe in future we're going to get a hybrid of both of those from Hasbro. I hope so, with the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith coming next year. Hopefully we get him. Hopefully we get Anakin Skywalker back on an Revenge of the Sith card back for the vintage collection that's got much improved articulation, hopefully a brand new sculpt. But that's what we got right now, and that's what the anniversary or the vintage collection version is for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Of course, there's a couple more things we want to mention over here. He was re-released in 2007 as part of the comic pack. So they had the comic packs. There was a Walmart comic pack that had Obi-Wan Kenobi and Bail Organa come with baby versions of Luke and Leia, and that's this guy over here. I'm just going to bring that nice and close just to show you. It is the figure that we're used to there that we have already known from the anniversary collection. He does come with his robe, which is awesome, and they've given Bail Organa a robe there as well. And you can see Bail is holding Princess Leia because him and his wife would adopt her, and then Obi-Wan is taking nice baby Luke over there that he's going to take to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru on Tatooine, and then watch him from afar. So that was another release of this Obi-Wan figure. I love this set here. It's designed really well, and I kept it in packaging just because it looks really good. In there, we'll just turn that around to the side back so you can see what that looks like as well from the back. And you can see a nice little cartoon picture there of Luke Skywalker, I believe it is. And then a close-up there of Bail Organa and Obi-Wan holding them. And Obi-Wan in the pose that we know. And, of course, a few other figures that were released in that wave. But I love doing these things with the Obi-Wan figures. If I have something that was a Revenge of the Sith release, I like to show them in the reviews as well for these figures. Of course, Disney would take over. So Disney took over Star Wars in 2012. And lo and behold, in 2013, we get a Saga Legends / Mission Series version of Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith. And the stuff I've shown you right now, the advancements in action figures are remarkable. And then we kind of go backwards and get these guys here in 2013. So mind you, everything I'm showing you till date here has been a prior release to this guy. So there is some things, some qualities about this action figure that are nice, but the fact that we've gone back to 5 points of articulation when we're so used to added articulation and advancements, it was disappointing. And if they've done away with the vintage collection line, and this guy does come with a lightsaber, and you can see what he looks like standing there. He looks really lonely, looks really sad, really bland. We'll give you a close-up of his head sculpt. The paint job is not very good. His eyebrows, for some reason, are a different brown. So they're more of a reddish brown, and then his beard and his hair are darker brown on there. His head does turn slightly side to side. There's no swivel there, but it does turn slightly. And his robes kind of come up and stops you from turning that head very far. But that's what Obi-Wan looks like close up there, head sculpt-wise. We'll turn him to the side. Mind you, again, it's 2013, so this would be the more recent release, but nowhere near as good as those previous ones. And not much paint applications on the robe, and very standard. Now, mind you, maybe they weren't really sure where to go with the line after they stopped the vintage collection and after Disney took over. We should give Hasbro some credit. Maybe they were just trying to pay homage to the original Star Wars figures by making similar ones, but this stuff was just not good at the time. And it's worth mentioning because it is a newer version action figure of Obi-Wan in that same outfit that he wore in Revenge of the Sith. That's why I wanted to bring him up over here. As far as articulation, you can move his arms up and down. There's nothing here at the wrists. You can't turn them. And if you notice, he's got the old action figure feature there with his robes and his legs, where there's a slit down the middle and you can lift his leg up, and it doesn't really go all the way up. It stops right there. And the same thing goes with the other side there. And that's what he looks like down over here. Down at the bottom, his boots are painted a different color. Again, the pose, the sculpting is a nice sculpt, but you can't do anything with the articulation. If we look underneath there, we can see the little peg holes on the bottom of his feet so you can stand him on a stand. He doesn't have any trouble standing on his own. And then that's what he looks like from the front one more time. That's what he looks like from the side. And that's what our Lonely Mission series Saga Legends Obi-Wan looks like from the back. And again, when you lift those legs forward, you can see the nice little gap or slit that you have here on the back. He's got a square peg butt. And underneath there, he's got a number. 10991. Maybe he's a clone. Maybe it's a clone of Obi-Wan. Clone B1. Obi-Wan, Obi-2, Obi-3. Maybe that's Obi-2. But that's what we got in the mission series. Okay, so we're going to finish up our review with one more release of Obi-Wan. This will be the Black Series version. So when the Black Series first came out in 2013, they had a bunch of figures. Obi-Wan was one of them. I never picked them up at the time. I never liked the face sculpts on these, and I was still coming to terms with having to start buying action figures again, but in a larger format when I had all these other ones that I was collecting for years already. I would start collecting Black Series, and I wouldn't get a chance to get that Obi-Wan until he was re-released again. This time in 2021, so that's this guy over here as part of the archive line. So they gave us the same figure as that original one, but they much improved the face sculpt with their scan technology and paint apps. So you can see it comes with the lightsaber there, a translucent blue, so it's not a full blue lightsaber. But nonetheless, it's a nicely sculpted lightsaber. We're going to just take that out of his hand to show you what that looks like close up. You see it comes with a nice little peg there. That's because the Black Series figures, the lightsabers do unplug, and you can see the buttons painted nicely there, the trigger on that lightsaber, and you can mount this onto his belt as well. And there's the lightsaber blade. And then if we just take that lightsaber there, we can plug this guy into Obi-Wan's belt right there on the front. See if I can get that while the video is going here just to show you. So that's how it sits on his waist there, and you can turn that side to side, but that's how that fits in on there if you don't want to have it plugged in. As far as the figure itself, a full articulation. Again, this is basically a 6-inch version of what we should get in 3 3/4 inch. It's a little bit dated compared to the stuff that they can make, but still far more superior than what we ever got in the 3 3/4 inch line. Head sculpt wise, it looks a lot better than the original release. The original one had really weird painted pupils. He definitely looks like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can see he looks very concerned, like he's ready to go to battle. And of course, it's sitting on a ball joint there, so you can turn that head side to side. You can go back a bit, and you can go forward a bit. You can see there, it doesn't have a double chin, which is nice. As far as the robes over here, so his arm is hidden behind the robe part there. I like how that looks. It definitely flows nicely, and of course, it's on a ball joint, so you can go fully up there. It doesn't get in the way, and you can go that far up there. And then, of course, at the elbow there, we can bend his elbow. And, of course, we have some added articulation here at the wrist as well. And there's a little ball joint there as well. So you can bend that down, bend that forward to help him hold his lightsaber better. But that's Obi-Wan Kenobi there. And as far as the waist, you can turn him side to side. And there's a tiny bit of ab crunch there going forward and back, but it kind of gets in the way of the bottom part of his robe there. You can only turn it so much. Working our way down here on the robes, of course, we have the two flaps, thin flaps of plastic here in the front, and we can see underneath there that he's got soft goods that run all the way around. And just like that 3 3/4 inch one we looked at from the anniversary collection, he does have swivels there at the thighs where you can position your Obi-Wan Kenobi any way you want. As far as the knees there, you can bend them at the knees, and of course at the ankle there as well, he's got added ankle articulation. And of course, my favorite thing, which they started now on 3 3/4 inch, he's got the option of sculpting him or posing him nicely with the ankle articulation there. The nice little swivel there at the bottom. So that's our Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Black Series. That's what he looks like from the front. Okay, and then we take a look at him underneath there. We can see it says Hasbro made in China on one foot. The other one says 2013 Lucasfilm Limited. So you can see that that's the same sculpt as the original one that came out years before, but this one was released in 2021. And that's what he looks like from the side. And then that's what he looks like from the back. That's our Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Black Series. So that takes us to the end for our review. I hope that you've stuck around this long. If you have, I thank you. Hope you've enjoyed the review. Again, I love doing these reviews, and hope to see you on the next review that we make, that we put up there. I know it's been a little bit while since I've put one up, but hang in there. We'll get some more going. Life tends to get in the way once in a while, but I really enjoy doing these things, and I hope that you guys enjoy watching them. So take care. We'll see you on the next one.